The text came in at 11:47 p.m., right as I was reviewing quarterly reports for my hospitality empire. My father's message was short, brutal, and typical. We sold your penthouse to cover wedding costs. Hope you understand. Sarah deserves the perfect day. I stared at the screen of my phone, sitting in my corner office overlooking downtown Seattle. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city lights twinkling below, including the building where my family thought I still lived in that modest two-bedroom apartment from 5 years ago. They had no idea I'd moved out of their world completely. My penthouse, the one I bought with my first real estate development bonus when I was 26. The one where I'd hosted family dinners, holiday celebrations, where my sister Sarah had brought her boyfriends to meet everyone. The same penthouse where Dad had stood on the balcony just 2 years ago, glass of wine in hand, telling me how proud he was that I'd finally made something of myself. I typed back, "Interesting choice." Within seconds, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Don't be dramatic, Alex. It's just a property. Sarah's wedding is once in a lifetime. We needed the money for the venue deposit, and frankly, you weren't using it anyway since you moved back in with us." Moved back in with them. That's what they thought. For the past 18 months, my family believed I'd hit financial trouble and moved back into my childhood bedroom. I'd carefully maintained that illusion, parking my old Honda Civic in their driveway every few days, showing up for Sunday dinners looking appropriately stressed about work troubles, and letting them believe I was struggling to get my consulting business off the ground. The truth was far more complicated. While my family saw a 31-year-old daughter who'd fallen on hard times, I was actually the CEO of Sterling Hospitality Group, a company I'd built from nothing into a $2.8 billion empire. I owned 17 luxury hotels across the Pacific Northwest, 3 high-end catering companies, and had just acquired the most prestigious wedding venue in the state. The same venue where my sister was getting married tomorrow. The Grandview Estate. I pulled up the contract on my computer, scrolling through the details I'd memorized months ago when I'd purchased the property. Sarah had been engaged for 8 months, and she'd been obsessing over this venue since the day Marcus proposed. "It's perfect," she'd gushed over Christmas dinner. "The gardens, the ballroom, the view of Mount Rainier. It's like a fairy tale." What she didn't know was that her fairy tale venue had been bleeding money for 2 years before I bought it. The previous owners were desperate to sell, and I'd acquired it through one of my subsidiary companies, Cascade Properties, LLC. My sister had no idea that when she'd put down her deposit, the check had ultimately made its way into my account. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Sarah herself. "Alex, I know you're upset about the penthouse, but please don't ruin my wedding day. This is the most important day of my life, and I need my family there. I'll pay you back for the penthouse somehow, I promise." I almost laughed. Pay me back. The penthouse was worth $1.2 million, which was barely a rounding error in my monthly revenue. But that wasn't the point. The point was that my family had sold my property I'd worked 80-hour weeks to afford, without asking me, without even telling me until the night before the wedding. This wasn't the first time they treated me like their personal ATM. When Dad's accounting firm had struggled during the pandemic, who do you think had anonymously purchased enough of his services to keep him afloat? When Mom's boutique was failing, who had arranged for several of my hotel properties to order their staff uniforms from her store? When Sarah's student loans were crushing her, who had paid them off through a scholarship program that didn't actually exist? For 3 years, I'd been their guardian angel, their safety net, their secret benefactor. And they repaid me by selling my home to fund a wedding at a venue I owned, assuming I was too broke and too broken to object. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Sterling Hospitality Group dashboard. Tomorrow's wedding was listed under Grandview Estate Events, a $47,000 package including ceremony space, reception hall, bridal suite, and premium catering service. The catering was being provided by Artisan Affairs, one of my companies. The wedding party and most of the guests were staying at the Cascade Grand Hotel downtown, another property in my portfolio. My family's perfect day was happening entirely within my business empire, and they had no idea. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus Chun, my director of operations. "Marcus, sorry to call so late. I need you to pull up the Henderson wedding tomorrow at Grandview. The one with 200 guests? What about it? I need you to make some adjustments to the service level. Nothing dramatic, just corporate standard instead of premium. There was a pause. Boss, that's your family's wedding, isn't it? Your sister Sarah? Marcus was one of the few people who knew my real identity. He'd been with me since the early days when Sterling Hospitality was just me, him, and a single struggling hotel I'd bought with every penny I had. It is, I said calmly, and they just sold my penthouse without asking to pay for it. Marcus understood immediately. He'd seen how my family treated me, how they assumed I was their safety net while simultaneously dismissing my success. What level of adjustments are we talking about? Let's start with the catering. Switch from the premium menu to standard. Replace the champagne toast with sparkling cider. The floral arrangements can be reduced by half. And Marcus? I want every bill itemized and presented to the father of the bride at the end of the evening. Done. Anything else? I thought for a moment, looking out at the city below. Actually, yes. I want you to personally oversee the wedding tomorrow. Make sure everything runs smoothly, but I want the family to understand exactly who's providing their perfect day. Understood. Should I prepare the ownership disclosure? Not yet. Let's see how the day unfolds. I hung up and tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. For years, I protected my family from behind the scenes, thinking that someday they'd appreciate what I'd built, what I'd accomplished. I'd imagine a moment where I could reveal the truth, and they'd be proud, amazed, grateful. Instead, they'd sold my home to pay for a party. The next morning came too quickly. I dressed carefully, not in the expensive designer clothes I usually wore to business meetings, but in the simple dress my family expected to see. I drove my old Honda to their house, where the chaos of wedding day preparation was in full swing. Alex, Mom rushed over as I walked through the front door. Thank goodness you're here. Sarah's having a meltdown about the flowers at the venue. Apparently, they're not as elaborate as she expected. I almost smiled. I'm sure it will work out. We hope so. Your father is already at the venue dealing with the catering situation. They switched some of the menu items at the last minute. Mom looked stressed, her hair half done and her makeup only partially applied. Honestly, these vendors are so unreliable. For what we're paying, you'd think everything would be perfect. How much are you paying exactly? I asked innocently. $47,000 for the whole package. It's a fortune, but Sarah deserves the best. Mom paused, looking at me with sudden guilt. Alex, I want you to know that selling your penthouse wasn't an easy decision, but we were desperate. The venue required the full payment up front, and we'd already put so much money into the dress, the flowers, the photographer. It's fine, Mom. Really. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. I spent the morning helping with last-minute preparations, watching my family stress about details that I could have fixed with a single phone call. Dad came back from the venue looking frustrated. The catering manager is being difficult, he announced. Very corporate, very by the book. Not willing to make any accommodations. What kind of accommodations? I asked. Sarah wanted to add 20 more guests to the dinner, and they're saying it's not possible without additional charges. $1,500 for 20 extra plates. It's highway robbery. I nodded sympathetically, while internally noting that Marcus was following my instructions perfectly. By 2 p.m., it was time to head to the venue. I rode with Mom and Sarah in Mom's car, listening to Sarah's last-minute anxieties about the day. What if the weather turns bad? What if the flowers don't look right? What if the food is terrible? Sarah twisted her engagement ring nervously. Everything has to be perfect, Alex. Marcus and I have been planning this for months. I'm sure we'll be beautiful, I said, and I meant it. Whatever my feelings about my family's treatment of me, I wasn't going to sabotage my sister's wedding day. I just wanted them to understand who was really making it possible. The Grandview estate looked stunning as we pulled up the circular driveway. The gardens were immaculate, the historic mansion gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, and Mount Rainier provided a picture-perfect backdrop. I'd invested heavily in renovating the property, and it showed. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. It's even more beautiful than I remembered. We were greeted at the entrance by Marcus, looking sharp in his event coordinator suit. To my family, he was just another vendor. To me, he was my second in command, the person who'd helped me build a hospitality empire. Good afternoon, ladies. I'm Marcus Chun, your event coordinator for today. Everything is ready for your celebration. Dad appeared from inside the mansion, looking slightly less stressed than he had that morning. Marcus has been very helpful, he told Mom. Very professional operation here. Thank you, sir. We pride ourselves on excellence. Marcus caught my eye for just a moment. If you'd like to see the ceremony space, I'd be happy to show you around. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of wedding preparation. Sarah transformed into a radiant bride. The photographer captured every moment, and slowly the guests began to arrive. I watched from the bridal suite window as cars filled the parking area. Family friends, college roommates, Marcus's business associates, all gathering to celebrate my sister's special day in a venue I owned. At 4:30, Marcus knocked on the bridal suite door. Ladies, it's time. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah glowed as she walked down the aisle. Dad looked proud as he gave her away, and Marcus's vows were heartfelt and genuine. For a moment, I forgot about the penthouse, forgot about my frustrations with my family, and just enjoyed seeing my sister happy. But reality crept back in during the cocktail hour. The catering is lovely, one of Mom's friends commented, but I was expecting something more elaborate for a venue this expensive. The flowers are nice, another guest observed, but they seem a bit sparse for a wedding this size. I watched my parents' faces grow tense as they overheard these comments. This was supposed to be their moment to shine, to show their social circle that they could throw an elegant wedding for their daughter. Instead, they were getting the exact service they'd paid for. Nothing more, nothing less. Dad found Marcus during the reception. Is there any way we can upgrade the champagne for the toast? This sparkling cider situation is embarrassing. I understand your concern, Mr. Henderson, Marcus replied smoothly. However, any upgrades would need to be approved and paid for in advance. The champagne upgrade would be an additional $800. $800 for champagne. It's Veuve Clicquot, sir. The same champagne originally included in your premium package, which was changed to standard at the client's request. I saw Dad's confusion. Changed at the client's request? I never requested any changes. I have the modification order right here, Marcus said, pulling out his tablet. Requested yesterday evening after the final payment was received. Dad studied the screen, his face growing pale. This says the modification was requested by A. Henderson. That's not me. I'm Robert Henderson. A. Henderson, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. Would that be Alexander Henderson? She's listed as an authorized party on the account. Both of my parents turned to look at me. Mom's eyes were wide with confusion. Alex, you changed the wedding menu. I walked over calmly, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it, the revelation I'd been building toward for 3 years. I made some adjustments to the service level, I said quietly, after I received Dad's text about selling my penthouse. What are you talking about? Dad's voice was rising, attracting attention from nearby guests. You don't have any authority over the wedding arrangements. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, sir, Ms. Alexander Henderson has full authority over all services at this venue. She's the owner of Grandview Estate. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom, Dad, and Sarah all stared at me with identical expressions of shock and disbelief. That's impossible, Sarah said finally. Alex lives in our basement. She's broke. Ma'am, Marcus continued professionally. Ms. Henderson is the CEO of Sterling Hospitality Group. She owns this venue, the catering company providing your food, and the hotel where most of your guests are staying tonight. Dad's face went through a range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, dawning realization. You own all of this. I do, but you moved back home. You were struggling. You needed help. I took a deep breath. I never moved back home, Dad. I have a suite at the Cascade Grand downtown. I'll let you think I was struggling because I wanted to see if you'd support me when you thought I had nothing. Instead, you sold my home to pay for a party. Mom sank into a nearby chair. The penthouse money went to fund a wedding at a venue I own, with catering from company I own, for guests staying at a hotel I own. I kept my voice calm, professional. For 3 years, I've been taking care of this family behind the scenes. When Dad's business was failing during the pandemic, I hired him for consulting work he didn't even know was fake. When Mom's boutique was struggling, I arranged for my hotels to buy uniforms they didn't need. When Sarah couldn't afford her student loans, I created a scholarship program that was really just me paying her debt. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Alex, I had no idea. None of you did. And that was the point. I wanted to see if you'd love me and support me when you thought I was struggling. Instead, you treated me like a burden, like someone who needed to be managed and fixed. The wedding reception continued around us, but our little family drama was contained to our corner of the ballroom. Marcus had positioned us away from the main crowd, protecting both my family's dignity and the other guests' enjoyment. So what happens now? Dad asked quietly. Are you going to kick us out? Ruin Sarah's wedding. I looked at my sister, beautiful in her wedding dress, tears streaming down her face. Whatever my hurt and anger, I wasn't cruel. The wedding continues exactly as planned, I said. Sarah, this is your day, and you deserve every moment of happiness. But things are going to be different between us going forward. Different how? Mom asked. No more secrets, no more lies about my circumstances, and no more taking my property without asking. I pulled out my phone and showed them a real estate app. The Penthouse sold for $1.2 million. The money is sitting in your account right now, but the sale is going to be reversed. I'll buy it back from the new owners at market price. Dad's eyes widened. You can afford to do that? Dad, I'm worth about $280 million personally. Sterling Hospitality Group is valued at $2.8 billion. I can afford whatever I need to afford. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of awkward family interactions and beautiful wedding moments. Sarah and Marcus had their first dance, the speeches were heartfelt, and the cake cutting was perfect. But underlying everything was the new reality our family had to navigate. As the evening wound down, Marcus approached with the final bill. Mr. Henderson, here's the itemized invoice for today's services. Dad looked at the paper, then at me. Alex, we can't afford this. Not really. We used every penny we had, plus the penthouse money. I know, I said gently. The bill has already been paid. Consider it my wedding gift to Sarah. But the changes you made were to make a point, not to punish anyone. Sarah got the wedding she dreamed of, in the venue she wanted, with the service she deserved. Sarah, still in her wedding dress, but with her hair slightly mussed from dancing, came over to us. Alex, I need to say something. I braced myself for anger, for accusations, for hurt feelings about the modified menu. Instead, she hugged me tightly. Thank you. For everything. For the wedding, for the loans you paid that I didn't know about, for taking care of us even when we didn't deserve it. You're my sister, I said simply. That's what family does. But we haven't been treating you like family, Dad said, his voice heavy with guilt. We've been treating you like a child, like someone who needed to be managed, when all along, you were taking care of us. Mom stood up from her chair, looking older than she had that morning. Alex, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We made assumptions about your life, about your success, about your choices. And we had no right to sell your property, regardless of the circumstances. No, you didn't, I agreed. But what's done is done. What matters now is how we move forward. How do we do that? Sarah asked. How do we have a normal family relationship when you're this successful? I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt all day. We start by being honest with each other. No more pretending, no more assumptions. You treat me like an adult who's capable of making her own decisions, and I'll stop protecting you from behind the scenes without telling you. And the penthouse? Dad asked. I'll handle it. But next time you need money, you ask me directly. No more taking things that belong to me, no matter how desperate you are. Next time, we'd ask if you could help, Mom said carefully. We wouldn't assume you owe us anything. Good, because I don't owe you anything. But I love you all, and I want to help when you need it. There's a difference. As the last guest departed and the venue staff began cleaning up, my family and I stood together in the gardens of the Grandview estate. The view of Mount Rainier was spectacular in the evening light, and for the first time in years, I felt like we might actually be able to build a real relationship. So, Sarah said, still holding her bouquet, tomorrow, when people ask about the wedding, what do I tell them about my sister who owns the venue? You tell them the truth, I said. That your sister loves you enough to give you the perfect wedding day, even when you sell her house to pay for it. Sarah laughed, and for the first time all day, it sounded completely genuine. I'm never going to live this down, am I? Probably not, I admitted. But that's what makes for good family stories. Dad cleared his throat. Alex, I have to ask, if you've been this successful for years, why did you let us think you were struggling? Why not just tell us? I considered the question carefully, because I needed to know who you really were. I needed to know if you'd love me and support me when you thought I had nothing to offer. And I needed to know if your love was conditional on my success. And what did you learn? Mom asked quietly. I learned that you're human. You make mistakes, you have flaws, you sometimes treat people badly when you're scared or stressed. But I also learned that you're still my family, and that's worth fighting for. As we walked back toward the parking area, Marcus approached me one final time. How did it go, boss? Better than expected, I said honestly. Thank you for handling everything so professionally. Always. And the penthouse situation, I'll handle it Monday morning. Give me a meeting with the buyers. I'm sure we can work something out. Already scheduled for 9 a.m. I smiled. Marcus always anticipated my needs before I voiced them. It was one of the many reasons Sterling Hospitality Group ran so smoothly. One more thing, I said as my family loaded into their cars. I want you to prepare a comprehensive presentation about our company holdings. I think it's time my family understood exactly what we've built. All of it. All of it. The hotels, the restaurants, the real estate developments, the investment portfolio. Everything. That's going to be quite a presentation. I looked back at the Grandview estate, at the venue where my sister had just married the love of her life, where my family had finally learned the truth about my success. Yes, it is, but I think they're ready for it now. As I drove home to my suite at the Cascade Grand, I reflected on the day's events. The wedding had been beautiful. My family had learned the truth, and we'd begun the process of building a real relationship based on honesty instead of assumptions. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation I'd sometimes imagined. There had been no screaming, no accusations, no storming out. Instead, there had been shock, confusion, guilt, and ultimately, the beginning of understanding. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Thank you for the most beautiful wedding day ever. I love you, sis. I smiled and typed back. I love you too. Congratulations, Mrs. Marcus Chun. Tomorrow, we'd start the real work of rebuilding our family relationships. But tonight, I was content knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes, it's just letting the people you love see who you really are.